Hey guys, this is Bryce with evopowersports. Today I'm going to be doing a little instructional video on our Alba clutch disassembly tool. There's a few different ways you can use it. One of them is on the car to do the clutch weights. We'll have another video for that in the future. For right now, I'm just going to show you how to disassemble your primary on the bench. So let's go ahead and get started. First part you're going to need is the large plate, the center spacer, which will go in like so, your primary disassembling tool to remove it from the car. First thing you're going to do is you're going to stick it in, screw it down. They recommend about 1.5 inches of protrusion. Go down a little further. Okay, that'll give you something to push against. You'll take your plate, you'll set it over. You want to make sure that the outer holes are lined up on your primary. You'll take your 6 black screws and screw them in. You'll take your 6mm Allen on your impact and just kind of snug them up just a little bit. Okay, from there, you'll take your long bolt and you'll thread her down in. Okay, until she's nice and tight. You'll take a 24mm socket and you'll just give her a little tap. Now, before you go ahead and tighten it down, know that it is going to pop off rather violently a little bit. So you'll want to take your handle and screw it into the side, give yourself something to hold on to. Okay, then you take your screws out. Take your plate off. Tool out. And your spider will come out. You'll have access to all your buttons and everything. Careful, because some of them will fall out, so try not to lose them. And then from here you'll have access to all your weights, and then access to your primary spring, and that's what we will be covering next. You just saw a video of us disassembling the primary to get to the primary spring. Now we're going to be doing a small little video on how to remove your primary spring. So what you'll need is the all thread with the welded on nut and the loose one. You'll need one of the washers, and you'll also need these 2 spacer plates. So first thing we're going to do is throw a spacer plate onto the rod, stick it through, put the other one on top, washer on top of that, and then we'll throw on the nut with the welded on handle. So you can either tighten this on by hand like I did, or you can go ahead and throw it in the vise. Either way, you're going to need to throw it in the vise for the next step. Okay, one important thing you're going to want to do before you disassemble the cap is you're going to want to make a reference mark on the cap and on the clutch basket itself, just so that way when you put it back together, you know it's going back together the same way. Put it over nice and tight. This bar doesn't need to be super tight down, just a little bit of light pressure. And then you will remove the 6 bolts holding on the spring cover. Just be careful when you do the last one because there will still be a little bit of pressure on there. Okay, and then after you have all 6 done, you can slowly go ahead and unscrew it. And there you go. Now you have access to your primary spring. Okay, so now that you got your new primary clutch spring put in and any weight adjustments that you wanted to do while your weights were free, we're going to go ahead and reassemble. Reassembly for this is pretty simple. So your back sheave will remain stationary. You just slide your primary clutch basket on. Make sure your spiders are back in your, pucks are back in your spider. And you'll go ahead and reassemble. So everything is still going to be loose, so be careful when you lift it up. All you need to do is just put it back on the car, and when you put your primary bolt back through it on the car, you just need to torque it down to 89 foot-pounds, and everything in the clutch will reseat itself and press back together. Hey guys, this is Bryce again with evopowersports. Today we're once again using the Alba clutch tool to disassemble your secondary on the bench. So the first thing you're going to need for tools out of the kit is the all thread, the 2 spacers, a washer, and the nut with the welded bar on it. So before you get all set up and everything, one thing you want to do is make sure that on your helix you mark which hole your spring is in initially. You also want to go ahead and make little marks where the arrow is. You can mark the arrow itself and then put a little mark out here on the outside. There's also one on the inside. They need to line up relatively close when you go all back together. So start off by putting the spacer on your secondary, and we'll throw it on the vise. Oops. You want the helix down. Spacer on, washer. Tighten it down. Once it stops, give it just a little quarter turn just to make it a little snug. Now there's 3 bolts on the bottom side holding the helix. You can either use a T50 Torx or a 13mm socket. And you're going to go ahead and remove those 3. Okay. Now, when you go to release this, go very slow because the secondary clutch is under a lot of tension. You'll be able to feel it start releasing. So just keep an eye on your helix. Okay, once you get to about here, you'll notice that, the helix is pretty loose. You're getting pretty close to the spring pressure releasing, so make sure that you grab onto both sheaths with a good grip and just go really slow. And there you go. You can now separate your secondary. Hey guys, we just did a video on the separation of your secondary. Now we're going to go over a quick little instructional video on how to reassemble. Like I said at the end of the other one, this one's a little bit tricky just because everything has to be clocked. So first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your new spring with the cup. Make sure that the hole of, or the stud of the spring goes into the hole of the cup, and then both of them will go into the only hole on the secondary itself. You'll see it lock into place. You'll also want to make sure that you marked your helix ahead of time so you remember which spring hole to put your spring into. Okay, so you'll have that set up and you can go ahead and throw this in the jig. sheath on. Spacer washer. Now when you install the nut on the top, you want to leave a little bit of room, probably about a 1/2 inch or so, because you're going to need to separate the helix and the secondary while you clock it. So like I said before, clocking it is a little bit of a pain. You're going to want to grab the lower half of the secondary and rotate it clockwise until the ramp side of the helix is on the back side of the roller. So like I said, it's kind of a pain. You'll get it over, and with one hand you're gonna have to hold everything kinda while you tighten it down. Okay, once again, you'll tighten it down until she's kind of snug. Now, here's where your arrows need to line up. Your lower sheath arrow needs to line up with your upper sheath. Now, if you look inside, when your arrows are lined up, your hole should line up for your bolts. Then you just go ahead, throw your bolts in, kind of start them by hand just so you know everything is going in fairly smoothly. Take your impact. Just make sure that they're all snug, and then slowly let loose. There you go, ready to be thrown back on the car.